March 23, 2009. Guangzhou Airport. An experienced crew of 2 people, Captain Kevin Kyle Mosley and First Officer Anthony Stephen Pino, are preparing for a scheduled cargo flight to Tokyo Narita Airport. They will spend several hours flying on a McDonnell Douglas MD-11F aircraft, which is famous for its rather heavy controls, especially in the takeoff and landing phases, and requires proper crew training. The estimated duration of the flight is 3 hours and 26 minutes, but jet fuel was filled for 6 hours and 3 minutes of flight. The alternate airport was Kansai. Today we will see a detailed timeline of the main events leading up to the crash and the final investigation report. At about 3:15 a.m., Flight 080 pushed back from the parking and soon took off from Guangzhou and climbed flight level 290, 8,850 meters. The flight proceeds normally at cruising altitude with no major issues. 6:41:35. The airplane called Narita Airport Traffic Control Tower Aerodrome Control Station, Narita Tower, and reported that it was 13 nautical miles to runway 34 left. 6:41:39. The airplane was flying with autopilot and auto throttle engaged. Narita Tower informed the airplane that the runway in use was 34 left and its landing sequence was second. It also informed the airplane that the wind was 320 degrees at 28 knots, the maximum 40 knots and the minimum 20 knots, and instructed the airplane to continue its approach. 6:43:57. Narita Tower provided the pilot report PIREP to the airplane that there was a wind shear of plus or minus 15 knots on the final approach toward runway 34 left below 2,000 feet, and added that the surface wind was 320 degrees at 23 knots.
What is a wind shear?
Wind shear is defined as a wind direction and/or speed change over a vertical or horizontal distance. It is significant when it causes changes to an aircraft's headwind or tailwind, such that the aircraft is abruptly displaced from its intended flight path and substantial control action is required to correct it.
6:44:11. Responding to the wind information, the crews exchanged a conversation to the effect that the situation was not so bad due to near headwind. 6:44:50. The pilot in command advised the first officer to check the wind shear guidance, and the first officer checked it out. 6:46:29. Narita Tower issued a landing clearance for runway 34 left to the airplane and added that the wind was 320 degrees at 29 knots with the maximum 36 knots and the minimum 17 knots, and the QNH altimeter setting 2956.
What is an altimeter?
An altimeter is a type of barometer which measures the vertical distance to the surface necessary for a pilot to maintain the desired or assigned altitude during flight.
6:46:53. Central Oral Warning System, CAWS, called 1,000 feet. 6:47:10. The captain said, "Yeehaw ride 'em, cowboy." 6:48:15. CAWS called out 50 feet. 6:48:19. The aircraft makes contact with the runway, but the landing is much harder than expected. The vertical speed upon impact is significant, causing the aircraft to bounce. This bounce is common in the MD-11 due to its design, but it requires precise control inputs to recover from such a situation. 6:48:22. After bouncing back into the air, the aircraft comes down again, this time with even more force. The hard impact causes the left wing to hit the ground. The plane begins to veer uncontrollably as a result of this impact, and the situation becomes critical. 6:48:28. The aircraft flips over onto its back, skidding down the runway inverted. The structural damage from the second impact and subsequent overturning is catastrophic. A fire erupts shortly after the crash, likely due to fuel spilling from the damaged fuel tanks. The fire rapidly engulfs the aircraft. Tragically, both the captain and first officer, the only occupants of the jet, lost their lives in the accident. Final Investigation Report. The Japan Transport Safety Board issued its final report on April 26, 2013. The report outlined several critical factors that led to the accident. Pilot error. The primary cause of the crash was determined to be pilot error. The investigation concluded that the crew did not properly handle the aircraft during the landing sequence. After the first hard touchdown, the pilots did not execute the necessary recovery actions to manage the bounce effectively. The improper control inputs during the bounce led to the catastrophic second impact. MD-11. Design characteristics. The MD-11 has a well-documented tendency to bounce during hard landings due to its unique center of gravity and landing gear configuration. This characteristic requires precise handling, particularly when the aircraft bounces. The crew's failure to manage this situation effectively was a critical factor in the accident. Environmental conditions. The gusty winds at Narita Airport made the landing more difficult but were not considered the direct cause of the accident. The conditions were within acceptable limits for the aircraft, but they added to the complexity of the landing and likely exacerbated the challenges faced by the crew during the bounce recovery. Conclusion. The crash of FedEx Flight 80 was caused by a combination of pilot error and the difficult landing characteristics of the MD-11, particularly under turbulent weather conditions. The pilot's failure to recover from the initial bounce led to the catastrophic second impact and subsequent crash. The Japan Transport Safety Board's final report emphasized the need for enhanced training for MD-11 pilots to address the specific challenges posed by the aircraft during landings. In memory of the pilots who lost their lives on board FedEx Flight 80. Sources: Wikipedia and Final Investigation Report. Thank you for watching. You can share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to my channel for more videos.